Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Inspired Action Life podcast. I'm your host, Karen Baldridge. And today I have another very exciting interview because for those of you who are trying to make something happen, you're afraid of making pivots, or you're thinking, how in the hell will I make this new career happen when I'm an accountant, but I want to be so and so. Well, I got your girl here because my girl over here was brave enough to dive in. I had to talk to her. I'm glad she made time to be on the podcast today so that she can kind of share with you the secret sauce and the breadcrumbs that she followed to make it to her successful place right now, but she ain't done yet. This is Jess Burgio. She is the host of the Unscripted podcast, and she's co-founder of Media Unscripted, which is a podcast talent agency. She'll explain a little more about that because I know I'm not doing a great job, but we're going to let her tell you what that is just in case we have any future podcasters out here. Again, she's your girl. You're going to want to look her up. I'll have all of her information. But I can't wait to dive in. So I'll stop rambling to let's hear a story about Jessica. And as usual, I will grab my drink and tell her to tell us a story, Jess.
I love this. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you. You and I have been connected now for several months from one of our favorite mentors, Lindsay Schwartz. Shout out to Lindsay.
Yes.
I love your intro that you just did. And for any future podcasters, take note of Karen's practiced, way that she opens up her show. It's very natural. It's very amazing. I just want to give you credit for that because as a podcaster, when I was new, that I did not have that flow down. And that is something that I think comes with practice and with putting yourself out there. So I just want to give you credit where credit's due because I do think this can be one of the funnest avenues to finding your voice and exploring what it might look like to put yourself out there, maybe in a bigger way, and to give yourself an opportunity to transition if you're currently, like she said, maybe an accountant, but you really love mindset coaching and you really feel like you're one of those people that even though you're helping them with their accountant, you are always their go-to person for talking things through, right? So that's a perfect example of maybe being good at something that you just take for granted. Right. So as a hairdresser for 22 years, I connected with people every single day behind the chair. I was the person who got to ask the questions. Why do you want bangs today? Why do you want to dye your hair black when we've always colored it blonde? What's going on? And
you're the therapist.
within a haircut, you're sitting there for anywhere from 45 minutes to 3-4 hours, depending on what you're getting done. So there's a lot of shared time in there. And I realized over the years that the reason why I had such a successful business as an entrepreneur in the beauty industry was because of my ability to connect with my clients and to give a really high level client experience from start to finish, meaning I got complimented on things like, wow, you really focus when you're working on me. I like that. Wow, you really make me feel special when I'm here. Thank you for that. Little things that I was just like, oh, you're welcome. Of course. Like, doesn't
Like,
all
it's so
hairdressers
natural
do?
for you. You never even thought a thing of it. It's just who you are, the
Right.
DNA level.
And that's one of those things that we take what we call these like soft skills for granted because they're just part of who we are, like she said, or it's maybe just what you do. And so you don't realize that these traits and these things actually can equate to a future business that you might want to start or have. And so knowing that you are capable of holding space, being a good listener, maybe being the person people turn to for specific, oh, I'm really thinking about this thing. What do you think? Those are the things you maybe want to lean into as your gifts to explore if doing something else is on your heart. So both Karen and I have like transitioned from one career to another. Mine was in the beauty industry for 22 years as a hairdresser and salon owner and a coach and mentor to stylists. So over my 22-year career, I had many assistants, work with me as I brought them up in the ranks and got them going on their own careers. And I always enjoyed that piece of teaching and coaching and mentorship because
yeah.
Right. I was really lucky to have it myself. So, but it was one of those things that's not what we called it back then. You kind of just learned from somebody, but really it was coaching and mentorship all along.
Yeah.
And I realized that because I had that, it's what created a lane for me to pull, reach back and pull people up with me. And through the years, there was always like this underlying feeling that this is what I'm going to do, the hair stuff, until I figure out what I really want to do with my life. I even went into beauty school with that thought. I even told my mom, like, hey, Relax. Trust me. I know this isn't a quote unquote real career to you, 22 years ago. It wasn't what, moms dreamed of. She wanted me to go to college to be a doctor, a lawyer, like one of those
Exactly. They all do.
labels so she could tell people I was that,
Yes.
not a hairdresser.
Yeah.
So I spent the first 10 years of my career proving to my mom that I could be successful and proving that this was a real career and I could make six figures and I could, right? And it wasn't until I had my son, I started to realize there were other things that I wanted in my life or a lifestyle or whatever it looked like that I couldn't do if I was stuck to a brick and mortar, if I was stuck to a clientele that didn't flow with me or move with me. I started to become jealous of people who could work from their phone or people who could work from anywhere. And I'm not talking about your laptop on the beach, but I'm talking about literally you could work anywhere, like at your kid's soccer game, or I mean, some of us work at a stoplight. So while I actually started in the beauty industry with an underlying goal of having a career that didn't come home with me, that's what my original goal was. I want a career that I can leave at work.
I think many of us look to that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I soon came to realize once I had my son that I needed to have a little bit of flexibility. I wanted to see what it would look like to be location free. And so that's where online businesses kind of started to really catch my attention. And I had a long history in health and fitness. I had competed in competitive bodybuilding. That was kind of like my side hustle. Yep. Side hustle slash, I guess really hobby, if you will. And I took it seriously for a while before I had my son. I also trained clients. And so I had a few years where I was able to double down on that clientele I had behind the chair and bring them into the gym. So a lot of my hair clients became my training clients because they saw me getting fit and people are drawn to you based off of what you're doing. So if you're selling, weight loss plans and you're massively overweight, you probably won't sell too many, but
have a great deal of success there.
Right. But if you're looking lean and fit and your clients are like, what are you doing? You're like, well, this is what I'm doing. Do you want help? I can help you. So those are, like I said in the beginning, those are the things that started to pique my interest in how I even created that second business, which was, personal training. People started to ask me, hey, what are you doing? And so I leaned into it. I'm like, well, I could meet you at the gym and train you. Well, how much? Well, I don't know. I started asking everybody else, what do you charge for personal training? Okay, that's what I charge. So
that's my going rate.
I think being curious and being open and being one of those people that when an opportunity presents itself, I do ask myself, is this an opportunity or a distraction? And in those cases, it was always an opportunity. So fast forward, I meet Lori Harder at a Strong Camp event run by Strong Fitness Magazine. She's one of the speakers. I'm one of the attendees. And she starts talking about her personal development event. And it's how I was first introduced to in-person big events. And I was like, wow, these are really, really cool.
That's the connection. Okay.
Yeah.
I wondered how you came upon Lori. So see, I'm learning as we go. Tell how that played out.
So then Strong Fitness Magazine asked me to host a camp here in San Diego. And at the time, I felt like I didn't really have a big enough following. Like a lot of us feel like when we're starting out on social media or starting a new business, we're like, if we did throw an event, who would come? We'd maybe get 2 people, right? So we're like, how do we do this?
Yeah.
So Paul Buscetta, who owns Strong Fitness Magazine, he was like, well, don't you know some maybe well-known people in the fitness industry that might want to help you host this camp? And I was like, well, I met Lori Harder a year or two ago at another camp. Do you think she'd do it with me? And Paul, men are so funny. He's like, well, just ask her. And I was like,
yeah, it's so easy. Easy to do.
You want me to just reach out to Lori Harder and see if she'll host a little podunk camp?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, just ask her. So I asked her and she said, sure. I was like, oh, it was that easy.
Wait a minute. Did you say sure? Or wait a minute, what did you say? Yes?
Exactly.
Oh my God, yes.
So sometimes this is a perfect example of we think things are going to be so much harder than they are, or that who am I to ask you for this? You're on this pedestal and I'm down here. Right. And it was one of those first moments where I was like, this is awesome. It really doesn't hurt to ask. It wouldn't not have hurt my feelings if she said no. I was expecting a no. Right. But I had a second question in the bank if she had said no, which would have been, do you know anybody that might be interested? I'm always prepared in situations like that. It's not like I expect the worst, but hope for the best, but kind of I'm just open. So she comes and she does this camp. We connect. She, at the end of it, offered me a ticket to her in-person event, which at the time was called the Bliss Project. So I show up at this big, huge event, 300-400 women, all deep diving into personal development, these amazing speakers talking about their stories of transition and trauma and transformation. And I'm just like, what the hell is going on here? Like, who are these women?
Yeah.
I was looking at the speakers thinking so many things. I was thinking, wow, like how would I ever be a speaker? I feel like I'd be good at motivating people, but a lot of them were connecting on maybe some trauma stories. And I'm like,
Right.
well, I don't know if I
I
have
don't
like
have one. That's what I always
one
would
of
think
those
too.
kind of
Like, well, I
stories.
don't have one.
Yeah, so maybe I won't be a good speaker. And so I started coming up with stories to support my fears
Yeah.
around showing up like that.
Exactly.
We always find what we're
We
looking for.
always do. We find what we're
So,
looking for every time.
right? Yep.
Mhm.
So I went again the next year. I asked if I could be a volunteer, and I wanted to see how the event was run. I wanted to see if what I was feeling as an attendee was really what was going on behind the scenes. And I remember like I was a whole year wiser, right? She had come and hosted one more event for Strong Fitness Magazine with me. I was feeling more confident in that arena and kind of really getting curious, like I had said, about what else could I be doing that
Right.
would look like this room or look like helping
Mhm.
more women, right? Because 400 women was far more than I was touching a day behind the chair.
Yeah.
So I started to feel this little nudge and this little voice like saying, you're meant for more. Aren't you going to be doing more with, if you just stay here, like this isn't, you're not living to your full potential. And so it was this pivotal moment where I could have just shoved that down and pretended like I didn't know any
Many
better.
do. Many people
Many
do.
of us do. And I
Mhm.
kind of did, but I kind of didn't. And
Mhm.
that's why I think my journey's taken a little longer than a lot of people, but it's
Okay.
because my life was really good where I was at. I was actually really, really happy. And so there wasn't this like pain point to get me to like burn the boats and say, fuck it, I'm going all into something else.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Happiness isn't the most useful emotion because it keeps you
right.
like anchored into the comfort zone. It just does. I agree.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, on a tangent for with that, what you just said, a lot of times we are not brainwashed, but convinced that if we practice deep gratitude, that we will be happier and that we will be able to work through things. The problem with gratituding yourself into staying put is just that. Sometimes we can tell ourselves, like, if I want more, like that makes me an ungrateful person. It's like, it's either this or that. I'm like, no, it can be this and this.
You're
You
telling
can
my
be
story. Yes.
you can be
Exactly.
so grateful for what you've built, what you've accomplished, who you are, but you can also want
Mhm.
more and
Mhm.
desire to put yourself out there at on a bigger playing field.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I kind of like thought to myself, maybe I need to do an event. Maybe I want it, blah, blah, blah. So I stayed close to Lori. We really connected. And then randomly, Chris Harder, her husband,
Mhm.
launched this high level mastermind for entrepreneurs who were
Mhm.
making more than 500,000 in their business. And
Mhm.
I thought to myself, well, holy shit, I'm never going to get to 500,000 in my business if I keep doing what I'm currently doing.
Exactly.
And I want to get in rooms like that. What are people like that doing? What are they talking about? What's going
Right.
on over there? And so
Yes.
I started to like kind of guess have FOMO. I was like,
Yeah.
well, shit. So I like kind of thought to myself and prayed and thought about it. And I was like, man, I really wish someone like Chris and Lori would create something for
Yeah.
like us new entrepreneurs or early stage entrepreneurs. And well, sure enough, one day Chris Harder's on his stories talking and he says, guess what, guys? I'm launching something called Fast Foundations. It's a early
Yep.
stage entrepreneurial business mastermind
Yes.
for any of you who are looking to grow and scale
I remember
online.
that. Because I found Chris before I found Lori. So I had
Yeah.
been listening to Chris for a year and a half before I even listened to Lori. So yes, I know about your Fast Foundations. I was so intrigued by that.
Right. But see, at this point, I'd known Lori now for almost 7, 8 years. So I'd always seen Chris as like the person who was keeping their MLM running strong and the way
Mhm.
that like they're networking and they were like investing in a bunch of stuff. And so I knew he was a huge component to her success.
Yeah.
And I had watched her skyrocket over those 6, 7 years
Yeah.
that I knew her. And then to see him kind of step into the light and own like his power as far as like networking and leading and bringing the right people together and having conversations that made you think bigger and like challenging you to like create plans and take action. I was like, it was instant FOMO and an instant like intuitive knowingness. I have to be in this first round
Yes.
because there's something about being first to something. It's just different.
Yeah.
So right away, I messaged him and I was like, yo, listen, I don't have what you're saying I need. I don't have an online business for you guys to help me grow and scale. Because at the time you had to be making 50,000 in your
Yeah.
online business in
I
order
remember
to
him saying
join.
that. Yep.
Yeah. So I said that to him. And then I said, but I'm making way more than that over here in my other business. What's your advice? Well, A, Chris is a great salesman. So he was like, well, masterminds have changed our life. I think you should get in the room. He said, and the second piece to that is rooms like this help people like you figure out the next move and what they should be doing. And you'll walk away with some high level friends, connections, and networking. And I said, so I'm going to spend upwards of $8,000-9,000 for maybe some new friends. I was like, this is wild, but I'm all in. And I literally told myself, go get it. At the moment, I didn't have like $8,000 to drop on this.
Right.
It was the most amount of money I'd ever invested in myself at that level with not knowing what the ROI was going to be.
Yeah. You
like,
have no idea what you're getting back from this whatsoever, but it sounds promising.
Right.
And there's something
right,
inside you. That's where that intuition part comes in.
Absolutely.
We're gonna hit on that a little bit later, but that's big.
So I told myself, I was like, you will not pay this credit card off with your other business's money. You will. I got a 0% interest credit card for the exact amount I needed. It was so like divine download.
Yeah.
I purchased it. And I remember thinking like, this is going to work. I just have I don't know how, but I have faith and I'm going all in. Yeah. And when I first walked into that room, I remember feeling like I didn't belong there, that I probably brought nothing to the table. I didn't have an online business. I didn't know what I was doing. I was so not scared. Scared wasn't even the right word. I was just like, they're not going to need me. I don't know.
Like a fraud. Like I just,
kind of,
what are you doing here, little sister? You know,
and what was so cool is we all had to do these hot seat introductions in the beginning of this mastermind. And I quickly realized as we all went up there, everyone's nervous to talk in front of people. That's like one thing that we all connected on. A lot of them weren't really clear on what their business was. Even if they did have one, didn't mean they were successful or had processes and systems that were making money. And then there was probably about, I don't know, 5 out of the 45 of us that actually had viable, online businesses that were scaling. So I quickly realized like, oh, I'm in the right room, which was a really good feeling. And then also as we started to have these breakout conversations, I realized, Jess, you do have a lot of life skills and knowledge and branding and marketing. And like, you can take that and help these people in this room. So adding value to me was like a really big deal. And I felt like, it's funny the things we don't give ourselves credit for knowing. And I realized in that room how much I actually did know. And so all in all, we all sat collectively after those first 2 days in person and said, this was worth every penny. We don't even care if we get any future calls. He had great speakers. So that's how I fell into this whole arena of all of the things and how everything kind of started. Because at the time I was still working full time in the salon. I didn't own a salon yet. But what was really cool is that first in person, he sent us home with like a list of things that we were going to go home and do. And so on my list, it was start a salon, start a podcast. This was like my dream goal list, right? Start a podcast and create networking events for hairdressers. There was a deep knowingness inside of me that knew that speaking only to my industry forever and ever wasn't going to be my end all be all. I really was connected to early stage entrepreneurs who were trying to build that foundation of like, who am I? What do I stand for? What do I want to be doing? Like all of that stuff is so much more important to me and can also help hairdressers, right? Because a lot of us get into the industry just to get into the industry with no real game plan, no real foundation to like how they're going to build, grow, or scale their business. So I say all that because I left there and I had a dream space fall into my lap. I was able to open a salon within 4 weeks of finding a space, which is unheard of. I started my networking brunches and they blew up. Everybody was so excited to just connect with one another. They were all just for hairdressers. So it was like the first time an in-person hairdressing event that didn't have like haircutting classes. It was just for us to connect. And I did like a mini thing with like speakers and like a time to connect with one another. And people were like, this is amazing. These are so cool. And so for 6 months, I was like cloud 9, trajectory, level 10. And then
loving
COVID.
This. Yeah.
COVID happened 6 months after I got back from all of that.
Oh my God.
So it was crazy because that really was the catalyst for me to stop and think, is salon ownership really what I wanted? Or was it just the quote unquote next right step for someone in my position? Yeah. And I once again realized I was doing something based off of what everybody else told me I should do. Hey, you're really good at, hairdressing. When are you ever going to open your own salon? My mom, she's an entrepreneur. She has her own business. Hey, next level, you should open your own salon. I'll help you. There were these people kind of pushing me to chase dreams that weren't really mine. So that's where it's interesting to get discerning, but like a lot of times you don't know until you try something. And I tried to take those networking events online, and I was just speaking to an industry that didn't have a backup plan. I was speaking to an industry that didn't want to hear anything but when we could reopen. And so it wasn't like landing with them where I was at. I was like, this is the perfect timing. Like, diversify what you're doing, start a second career, start a podcast. Like, nobody wanted to hear any of that. They wanted to
play a
just
little
know.
bit. Yeah, the world is frozen, you know what I mean? So do what you want to try now.
Right. But a lot of people couldn't. They were stuck. And so what was cool is I had said to myself for about 2 years I wanted to start a podcast. And I finally in that time had a quiet, awesome space and a client who actually was like a videographer. So we sat down and we started recording episodes. And what was really neat was I had this aha of like, wow, I've networked my ass off in San Diego. I've been here my whole life. I've been in this industry 20 plus years. I know a lot of people that I can connect with and share and give a voice to, like, what is currently happening, which was us being in lockdown.
Yeah.
So I snuck all my hairdresser friends in and we started the show, and we recorded live in-person episodes for the first like 25 episodes.
Oh,
and
wow.
It was amazing. And it made me really feel like, hey, I could be good. I wasn't good in the beginning, but I could be good at this. If this is something I really like to do, I love connecting. I love sharing people's stories. I'm like you. I love asking questions. I love to be nosy. Yeah.
Yep. Nosy.
Nosy. So I share all that because in that I was like, well, I have to have Chris Harder on the show. He's like one of my biggest mentors and the catalyst for me having this space, starting the podcast, taking all this action. Like, I wonder if he would be on my show. Yeah. And so he was like my first Zoom interview. Everyone else up to that point had been in person. Really? And so we had a great conversation. And at the end of it, I said to him, we stopped recording. I said, Chris, listen, I really think that you should have like this accelerated coaching program for people who have gone through your mastermind, but like some of us left still needing coaching, still needing help. And like, I can't really afford you one-on-one, but like, if I knew someone was trained by you, I would be more inclined to like coach with them. Yeah. And he says, well, actually after, cause he had run another round after my first round, right. He had said, after your round, we implemented these support coaches and we're actually looking for someone else to join the team. Would you want to be one of them? And I was like, me, hairdresser Jess? You want me to coach inside your
hairdresser, right?
Right.
Love it.
But he had been watching and he had seen my, he knew all about me. I'd been in the mastermind for 5-6 months at that point. He'd known my career path and what all that I had accomplished. So he was like, listen, I don't need you to be me. Support coaches are there for accountability and strategy. What would you rate yourself for accountability? I'm like 10 out of 10. I can help people with accountability, right? I'd been coaching at the gym. I'd been coaching my clients through hair
You'd
stuff.
already had that space covered already. You'd already done that.
Right. So, and this is an example of like, first thought was like, I'm not a coach. Second thought was, but yeah, you're right. I do have these skill sets that I can do what you're asking me to do if I don't think so big picture. He's not telling me to be like him. He's telling me to be me and just support these people because I know what it's like to be in their shoes. And then he's like, how are you with strategy? I'm like, I don't know, maybe 8 out of 10. He's like, awesome. You'll get better as you go through it. So from that moment, I was handed 25 clients in their next round of the mastermind. And that's where my coaching career really took off. And where I got to explore what that looked like. Wow. And it was really client-led coaching because they had the mastermind as the main. And then I got to just come in and hold space and listen like I was really good at and kind of talk things through. And I learned that I could say things like, I don't know the answer to that, but let me go find out for you. Yeah. So it really fueled the confidence I needed to step into this like space of owning like my thoughts and how my perspective and the fact that I can actually contribute in a big way as far as a coach and a mentor. So that unlocked a lot for me. So I owe Chris a lot of credit when it comes to that. And it's why I stay so close to Chris and Lori, because I always want to be that person that never forgets where they came from and never forgets who helped them. And even if you paid for that help, right? Mm-hmm. So I've been a part of Lori's events since then, and I've been a part of Chris's mastermind up until he sold it. And I even transitioned from working for him into when the new people took it over. And that was great. Mm-hmm. But I realized when it transitioned to new owners that it was time for me to step into my own. Yeah. And it was time for me to start leading from the front, not from the side or the back. Yeah.
Do your own
thing.
Mm-hmm.
My podcast had a lot of growth and a lot of really, pivotal moments where sometimes I wanted to quit. I wasn't quite sure the direction I was going with the show. And I wasn't sure if coaching was the thing for me. And I think it was just the fact that coaching felt very similar to trading time for money as it did with doing a haircut. So I was like, this is interesting.
What I found out as well. Yep.
I'm not stuck to a chair at the salon, but now my ass is stuck to a seat in my office in front of a computer. I don't know about this. And so that's when I also realized, Jess, you've never had a hard time creating a job for yourself or making money doing things you love. If you don't love this, that's okay. Like, you can own that. No one's going to think less of you. Yeah. Like, it's okay. So I pulled back from taking one-on-one coaching clients, and I really leaned into my podcast, and I got around other podcasters who were really using their podcast as their main source of income. Like, they were making multiple six figures from their podcast. Maybe they were creating podcast courses. Maybe they were teaching others. And I was like, let me reach out and have some calls. So I had calls with Keisha Get Married. I had calls with Angie Lee, Lori, Chris, all talk. I said, I really want to take my podcast seriously. Could this be my business? And they were like, yes, absolutely. And then in the future, once you build this platform up, if you want to start a brand or open this or whatever,
it's the gateway.
It's the gateway.
There's your audience.
You will have built your audience. You will have built a community. You will have served at a level of giving, right? You're not asking anything in your podcast. You're literally giving free value.
Correct.
This could be your thing. And so I got around people who made me believe it was possible. I found people who were doing what I wanted, who had 8 million, 10 million, 50 million downloads on their show, telling me how they created brand deals, how they work out numbers with people, how they put ads into their podcast. Like, I researched everything so that I knew the plan, because the plan helped me create, the confidence to take action on the stuff. And then it was the taking action on the stuff and seeing the results that like 10x the confidence, and is why you hear me speak about this now with such, solid groundedness. It's just, I've owned it, and I'm all in on growing my podcast, so much so that I reached out to one of my past, she was basically one of my executive assistant / you can call her a VA, but she was so much more digital marketing guru, Mariana, a couple months back. And I said, listen, I have sat in multiple rooms, and this is the first time I've really shared this piece of it, but this is a real honest, pivotal moment for me. I've sat in enough mastermind rooms, collective meetups, networking events to see that anybody who comes in with a quote unquote done for you service will walk out with a 6-figure business at the end of, say, a 3-month or 6-month round. And why that happens is because the power of network 10x's your ability to grow a business.
Correct.
So I watch people with social media agencies scale, right? Because let's say there's 15 to 20 people in that room. Probably 30% of that room will end up doing business one-on-one with that agency. Right. And then also, let's just say the 15 people all refer one person. Not only have you 10x what you invested in that, you're now 10x your own income for the future. And so I reached out to her and I said, I love podcasting so much. I had no idea when I joined Mastermind back in 2019 that this is the path I would end up on. If you would have asked me if I was going to be a podcaster, I would have laughed. 2, I would have never thought I'd run an agency. I know they're a lot of work, but hard work isn't what I was trying to get away from. It was the trading time for money in specifically like the coaching space, but I still want to have that accountability strategy conversations with clients. So I reached out to her and I said, let's start a podcast agency. And she was like, seriously?
Okay.
And she's a projector like me. So as projectors, we love to be the guide, and we're meant to just wait for an invitation. So she is like, I literally have been praying and waiting for an invitation to join somebody's something. And when we separated ways a couple years ago, it wasn't because she wasn't amazing. It was because I was kind of thinking I was up leveling into this other podcast agency that like promised me the world, and I got it. But I learned so much when I went over into the agency world as a client, all the things I loved, all the things I wanted to add.
That's what I was going to ask. You've had experience. You've clearly, in order to like flesh out or build out this business model, you would have had to have some experience with some sort of an agency. Because, us regular people or people right now who have a regular podcast, which I love it too, but I haven't done anything, really deep dive with it. I've not been with an agency, so I wouldn't know exactly what to expect. So what is it that at an agency that is different than just putting your message out there and trying to get some attention on social media? What, as an agency, did you decide based on your experience with your own being a, customer of an agency.
Yeah.
How did you design the service menu for what you're doing now? I mean, I'm curious.
Yeah,
If
that's a
doesn't
great
know
question.
you.
That's a great question. But remember, I came from a service industry. I came from a service-based industry that had menus. And this was the second part of what I felt was very much in alignment for me. When you come into a salon and you ask for a haircut, you generally know exactly how much it's going to be, right? Haircut for me was $100.
Yep.
It was going to take an hour. This is the experience you were going to get. You were greeted. You were given a gown. You were given a beverage of choice. You were given a luxurious hair wash. You were given a beautiful blowout. You were given my one-on-one attention during that time when you're there.
Yeah.
You were asked if you'd like to pre-book. You were offered products as you walked out the door to help maintain what I had just given you. It was a full start to finish experience. And that is what I found was missing with every agency that I was a part of, which was a few.
Okay.
The
Interesting.
done for you
point.
stuff is great. I want the show edited and produced. I want the show dropped into my Podbean platform to get distributed. I want good show notes written. I want my emails done. That's all great. The deliverables are awesome.
Yeah.
And side note, the deliverables are what felt good for me to charge for. So like with coaching, I didn't feel like I was giving somebody something. There wasn't this tangible thing where I'm like, here's your thing that you paid for. That was my own like thought process around, yeah, they were getting connected with me coaching. They were getting my energy, my time. We can go into all that. Sure. But for someone who spent 22 years literally giving someone a haircut, like this creative process, I felt that was lacking in my business. And if you want to have longevity in your business and feel in true alignment, you have to understand what works for you. Just because your clients are maybe having great results, my coaching clients all rave, they're wonderful. Oh, Jess is, but I didn't feel like it was this equal energy exchange. I wanted to be giving more. How can I give more, get compensated, but everybody's happy and feeling like they're getting what they need,
so you
what
have
they want.
proof that it has taken effect, because I think that's in the world of coaching. Many of us will pivot that way, but I quickly found out, like you, that one-on-one, it's an exchange of money for time. And I didn't always know if it was taking hold, because if they would come back to the next thing and not have changed a thing, I'm going, okay, did I fail in the messaging? Or, and I would take some of that on, like, okay, this was not a successful session. Why was it? And so I found myself from that place doing, so coaching was a little more difficult, more so than I thought, because I had to try it first. So you're a perfect example. You got to try something first before you have all these preconceived. You have to try it, and you don't have to be stuck in that same direction. You can pivot. But coaching is that way, where I feel like group stuff is a little bit more, it's more transactional, where I'm giving you an experience, but it's up to you, because information isn't transformation. It's just information until you decide to transform. But that's really up to you. And your timetable.
I love that. Yeah. And you're so right. And again, we wouldn't know that unless we tried it.
Correct.
And so the experience that I wanted to bring with this agency was so much that I needed a partner, because there is so many like little pieces that go into giving those deliverables that I knew Mariana could handle all of that without me. I wanted to be the driving force to use the network I had spent 4 years building and investing in time, money, energy wise. I knew there were so many people who were feeling stuck in their podcast journey, whether they had already started and they were busy doing the busy work, right? Writing their own show notes, producing their own episode, meaning editing things out or finding guests or writing the emails to go with each one. There were so many basic things that I knew were sucking time from people who are brilliant like you, who should be out there spreading their message, planning their retreats, doing their thing, connecting on social to try to get more people into their world. You know, that's your zone of genius. It's not the details of writing, all of the shit and making the graphics on Canva. So I was like, let me give those over to people who are really good at that kind of stuff. And let me focus on people who maybe already have a podcast, but and see the value in hiring us to do this stuff for them. And they'll get me as their strategy and accountability coach. They'll get me to help create ideas for their podcast to be able to drive traffic to each episode, right? Drive traffic to the episode is one. If you have an amazing podcast and no one knows about it, that's where you got to start. You have to market your podcast. How do you you do that? I'll give you a
Yeah.
few
How do
tips.
you do it?
You
Right.
talk about it on social. That's
Right.
first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about it a lot on social, and you talk about it from every angle on social,
Mm.
stories, reels, posts. And you don't just talk about it on the one day that your episode drops. You talk
Mm.
about it day before, day of, day after, weeks later. You still want to bring up relevancy to all the episodes you've ever created because it positions you as a thought leader. And so when people think of things, they'll think of you as the go-to person to ask about that or to go listen to a show. That's
Yeah.
first and foremost. The
Yeah.
second part is if you have a podcast, it should be driving traffic somewhere. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe you don't have a business yet. Maybe you're like me and you just started the podcast and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen, but
Mm-hmm.
I know I need to be telling these listeners what to do next after they get off this episode.
Right.
So, first and foremost is just asking and reminding them, hey, ratings and reviews are the way to my heart. Please share this episode. You know, if you leave a rating and review, like I'll give you a shout out on my social media, or maybe a giveaway of maybe you could be a guest on my show so I could help promote you. There are so many ways you can start to build connection and rapport and just
Right.
like all of that with your show. So
Yeah.
I knew that I could be the biggest partner for anybody who has a podcast. So I was like, I love being a hype girl. It's in my bio. It's in my bio on Instagram. Like I truly am a cheerleader through and through, and I want to see everybody win. And in the podcasting space, it reminded me of being a hairdresser in a salon. When people would say things like, oh, you're taking my clients, or if you do this and it's taking clients from me. And I'm like, there are 7 billion people in the world. San
Yeah.
Diego has probably 6 million of them. I don't even know.
Yeah.
We're so huge. There are only 20 of us in this room. Like,
Yeah.
even if we all had 10 clients a day, we'd still would only service like a 0.1 of San Diego.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
I'm
I've
no
always
threat
had,
to you. Okay. I'm
yeah,
no threat.
I've always had that mindset, and it actually has helped us. We've signed like 7 new clients in the first 6 weeks of being in business, all brand new podcasters who have been watching me and who have been thinking about starting a podcast, and they watched my journey and they heard me share about how long it took me to start my show. And then
Yeah.
they heard me talk about all the things I wish I would have done differently in the beginning and how I could have saved time and money and grown the show quicker. So it's just morphed into what it is now, but it's what gets me so excited is to help other people connect their voice to their brand through
Yeah.
podcasting.
Yeah, I
Because
mean, it's such an interesting medium now because you own it all. You
yep,
own the flow. It doesn't have to go through social media to get the messaging. And so that's why it's just such a unique opportunity to create a business, platform, but just create some kind of loyalty or, to the content that you're putting out there, and people will follow you, like you said, because you become a thought leader. And then that has a life of its own, right? Once you're considered a thought leader, well, then the opportunities are endless once you get put with that moniker. That can go with you in lots of different roads, that travels with you. So I mean, I think that this is very interesting, and I love how it's just now getting onto my radar, where people, this is really a good time to be doing what you're doing, because this is just a really hot topic, and it's a way to have people express themselves. It's a way of expression. You don't have to be a coach to be a podcaster. I mean, you don't have to be coaching people. It's more, sometimes it's just stream of consciousness. Some people will get on there and say, hey, anyone else feel like me out here? I mean, is this world gone crazy? I mean, like, you are insane. Like, what is going on? Or whatever. It's just a way to get your message. So that's why what you're doing is important, because you're recognizing it. So clearly you had that. And see, you follow the exact brand of what I'm talking about when I bring these stories. It's like following those breadcrumbs. The success leaves clues, right? Because it does. I mean, you were always this person who was able to connect, and that did well by you in your first part of your career, the first chapter in the hairdressing industry, because that makes people have a certain loyalty to you. Not only are you giving them amazing, cuts and styles, but you are also it's an amazing experience end to end, and so that's what creates that brand loyalty. You are your own brand, right? But that is one of the things. I've sat in chairs of hairdressers who are just dry as a bone and don't say one word, and I understand that, because sometimes I don't want to have too much talking. Sometimes I'm there to just get some self-care, relax. It just depends. But I'm a talker, so more often than not, I'm talking. But nonetheless, and I've had the yin and yang of both of that. But you knew that, hey, if that works in this industry, you had that still small voice that told you, wait a minute, why wouldn't it work here? It's the same skill set. It's the same.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still the same Jessica. I'm just doing it in another thing. And there's the rub, because not everyone's going to do how you did it, because you have that, you not only have the ability to do it, but more importantly, you took the leap and you mustered up the confidence and the bravery to try something new and invest with your wallet, baby. That's a big one. I'm sorry, that's a big one. You're a mom. I don't know what, if you were like single mom and then you have to like be coming through with this extra bill, knowing that I've got to also support my child and
Mm-hmm.
myself, and I'm doing something, this is being wild. I can't believe I'm doing this. So again, it's that whole perfect storm for you,
Yeah.
because you were all of those things. But what was it that gave you the like, what was that aha moment, that flexion point for you that said, I'm freaking doing it? Was it just a feel like back in the Chris Harder? Because I think that was your biggest flexion point, it sounds like, other than getting your mom off your case about, being a hairdresser. But it sounds like the next big leap. Everyone has those moments, those aha moments, or that punch in the gut. Sometimes it comes wrapped up in pain, and like, I've got to make a change now because this hurts so bad. I can't stay here.
Mm-hmm.
But what was it that was the final draw for you that said, I'm freaking doing this? I'm going to figure out how to finance this. I'm just curious, because that's always a big deal for me, is to find out what changed the game. Why?
Yeah. Well, I think I was at the top of my game as far as what I was bringing in financially. It was the year I'd made the most I'd ever made. And I had a new-ish opportunity come into my world, like probably a year prior, that had upped my income. I had met this woman by saying yes to a couple opportunities to do hair and makeup, like, out of state, out of town.
Oh, yeah.
And that side of my business was growing. And so I had these high level clients, and I'd seen a peek into that world, right? I'd been at her house, like they're very well off. And I had seen what that looked like. And so it opened my eyes to, that's not necessarily going to make me happier, but there's a whole ass world out there of more. And I will never have access to that if I don't change what I'm currently doing now. And even though I'm making the most amount of money I've ever made, it was still scary to bet on myself in that way with that amount of money. And like I had said before, I told myself I would not rob Peter to pay Paul and pay it back with the other business.
Love it. Yeah.
So part of the story I don't really ever share too is about a year or so later, right before COVID, I want to say January. So this is all like within the first year of that big investment. I had started to feel a little bad because I hadn't been asked this. This was before I started coaching with Chris. And I had started to feel bad. Like I'd seen all these people that were in my group that first round say, that they'd had these 10K months and they've been making all this money. And I was like, man, I just really haven't made this money back.
Yeah.
And like, that kind of sucks. But my other business was still really, really thriving. I was starting to put myself out there on social media. So like I was making more money based off of who I was becoming, but I was still looking at it as this isn't this like I wanted. And so I'll answer your first question in a second, because I think this part is really important. But remember, I'm a hair and makeup artist. So Lori Harder, his wife, and Lindsay Schwartz decided to partner up in early 2020 and create an event called Event Love, where they were going to teach for 1 week straight on how to create profitable events, because they had both been throwing big events and having lots of success. And I knew that there was no way in hell I was going to drop another $5,000 on something that I didn't know how it was going to turn out.
Exactly.
But I thought to myself, listen, Jess, you've already invested at this level with her husband. Maybe that will count for something, and you can ask to be in the room. Remember, it never hurts to ask.
Correct.
So I reached out to both Lindsay and Lori separately, and I said, hey, I have one thing to offer, which is glam, hair and makeup. How would you feel if I got myself to Arizona, put myself up in a hotel room, and got you guys both ready every single morning before you went and spoke? I'll also, because remember, I had been a volunteer at Lori's event before, twice. I said, I'll also be happy to take the trash out and hold the door and get water for people and like just be of service so I can be in that room and learn from you guys. So not only did I have something to offer that was of value, right? Hair and makeup. So I used the skill set I had. I also offered to do whatever they needed. And so they both kind of took like a week, and they must have talked, and they were like, absolutely, we want you there. So I got to sit in that room for free, right? All it cost me was my time.
Right.
And I remember I was doing Lindsay's makeup like the second morning, and we were talking about masterminds and the experience. And she was like, how do you think it's going down there? So here I am sitting in the room in the morning with the two people running the event, getting insider information
Yes.
and the energy
That's
and like what goes on
huge.
behind the scenes. It's
Yeah.
a big deal.
That's a huge
And I
deal.
said something to Lindsay about not having made my money back from the mastermind investment. And she paused, and I'm like mid, putting lashes on her. And she looks up at me and she says, well, you're here this week, aren't you? And I thought for a second, oh my God, I just made back like $6,000 this week, if you will look at it that way. I just created an opportunity for myself because I invested in myself last year. They probably wouldn't have had me in that room. I would not have been on their radar. They wouldn't have seen me, quote unquote, playing at this level and considered me to be of value in that room. But because I had gone through that program,
you were in the room, and
I was in the room, and I made myself available, and I went for the ask, and it changed the way I thought about things and how we relate making money. And what does experience and networking equal? Is it always dollars in your pocket? No, but it's those moments like that change everything for you, that make you believe like, this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm using a skill set that I thought wasn't of value, hair and makeup, right? But here I am gifting this to people who don't know how to do it to themselves very well. So they think I'm just amazing. And it's just like
breadcrumbs. There it is.
breadcrumbs.
Cecily's clue. It went, another breadcrumb was dropped right in front of you. I have an app that I think you might find is, you've probably heard of it. Have you heard of the book Get Rich, Lucky Bitch? Have you heard of that?
No.
There's a Lucky Bitch app, and I use it for every time anything like that happens that is lucky, that's either money unexpected that comes, or I get a value like for money, like how you got to go to that event, which was a $6,000 value. Okay, I count that as $6,000. Like that was 6,000 that was meant for me, destined for me. Or if a opportunity finds its way to me, I put it in the app. And it's one way to get very present with changing your client's mind or changing your own mind about how actually blessed and lucky you actually are. And I just liked the name. I thought it was kind of funny. It was a funny book, but it's a little more sassy. Good. But yeah, like every month I'll find like, oh God, like last month I had like a $6,000 or $7,000 transmission that actually a warranty that I didn't even know I had on my Porsche. The transmission, like something happened to it, and I took it in going, oh my God, how much is this going to cost? I'm just going to get rid of my car. Nope. They said, and here's literally what he said, Jess, is that this is why this is important to this story. He said, you are one lucky lady. And I'm like, yes, I am. Actually, I call myself lucky all the time because of opportunities like that. And he said, because there was a warranty that came out that's going to expire in 2 weeks, and this will be covered every penny for free. That was going to be $7,000 for a transmission for a car that only had 45,000 miles on it. I was like, how? Are you kidding me? So girl was on my phone. I'm like, lucky bitch. I just made so much. $8,000 this month because of stupid stuff like that. So I'm just saying, there's the money that you get for your services, but then do not forget about all the extraneous stuff, and it adds up and it matters, and it's not there by happenstance. It found its way to you because you're open to the flow. Yeah. And you were open to the call. You were open to believing that I am lucky. So I never go around and say, I don't have that opportunity. I'm not lucky. Why? No. I'm always lucky. Good things are always happening to me.
And that's why, and to answer your original question, which was, how did you know to invest at that time? It was because I'd been around long enough watching. And I was sick of watching. And I knew in this moment, he had created exactly what I knew I needed. So I at least knew I needed the help. I knew I needed guidance. I knew I couldn't get over there into that room with those people if I didn't pay to play. And I knew enough that there would be a residual. I just didn't know what it was going to be. And it's been 10x anything I could have created. And it's actually been 10x more than a lot of people that were in that first room, as far as all the quote unquote lucky things that have happened to me since starting that. So I am that's why I was such a huge advocate for working for him, and then for also like driving traffic to his masterminds and courses and programs, and why I still quote him to this day. And I'll share something that actually is not even live yet. And maybe by the time this podcast episode goes out, he has been running these roundtables for the last year, which are these 48-hour get in a room 2-day events that he has. And it's maybe like $5,000 to be in them. And it's where he sits down with you and 15 other entrepreneurs, and you put together like your business plan, or they help you figure out the gaps in your business. It's for you want to be a little bit more strategic in why you would be joining this one. Wouldn't say these are for anyone who's just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So since launching the agency a few months ago, I was like, man, I'm when we're ready, I think I'd like to be in one of those rooms.
Right.
And it's so funny because I know so many people in this industry now, and I know that there were other social media and podcast agency people in the last few rounds. And for me, I want to wait if I know that there's potentially an opportunity for me to shine, right? Like I'm willing to wait and have a little bit of FOMO and feel left out while everybody else gets to go first. And then when the kind of things have cleared and I feel like, okay, I think now is my time to shine, then that's when you have to take action, right? But again, even at the level I'm at now, investing $5,000, I'm like, okay, well, let's go. Okay, let me think about this.
Yeah.
And so he posted yesterday, actually, that they're opening up spots for their next round, which is going to be end of November. And I thought to myself, okay, what's the theme? And the theme is, 2024 planning and getting, you strategic for the next year. And I'm like, okay, so in 2 days, I could sit down and figure out my whole business plan for 24. I think this is a good investment. So I went back, talked to my partner. We talked about some things. Chris is awesome. He has this text community where you can like actually text with him.
Yeah.
So of course I text him all the ideas that I had, everything we've been working on. And I said, again, like I did when I made that decision back in 2019, do you think this is the round I should be in? And of course, again, he's a good salesman.
Yep.
And he said, I love what you're creating. I want to know more. I've been wanting to have somebody I can refer people to that are my peers at a different level. So I'd love to know exactly what it is you're doing. So it was like a invitation to get into the room. So I took notes on how he was marketing to me. I took notes on how it made me feel. I took notes on the opportunity I might have. And then I went one step further and I said, I would like to be the only podcast agency in that room. Do you think that's an opportunity I might get? More or less, I wanted him to tell me, because we know in networking rooms or, those traditional networking events where there's like one of each, whatever.
Right.
I think there's a business model to follow. And sometimes, like we said, success leaves clues. So that's worked in other industries. So let me see if it'll work here. And he basically said, yes, that I would probably be the only one. And so that gave me that extra confidence to know that I would shine in that room. And now I know how ROI works. And I don't have levels of expectation where I'm going to feel like I failed or whatever if I don't X, Y, Z.
Yeah, because you don't know how to like tangibly form up or frame up what the ROI was, because it's kind of nebulous. It's like, well, it's a little bit here, it's a little bit here, but it's not a thing, but it's kind of an energy. And you kind of got to be open to that whole thing when you're doing a business. There has to be a little openness to the things unseen, that unseen realm, the unseen. I don't know why I feel it, but I feel it, but I trust what I feel here. Like those kind of things. I don't know exactly what my tangible ROI is going to be, but there's going to be something because I feel it.
Yep.
So, those are all.
And then it kept going. I'll share it. Like it kept going. It's such a, and I know we've been podcasting for so long now. So if you guys are still
may have to do a 2 episode. I may have.
We are gonna have to
edit this into a 2 because they're so juicy, so
juicy. But what was so neat is I wrote him back and I said, okay, I'll be speaking with my partner. I'll make a decision probably by the end of the day. And I had said, one of my vision goals at the end of the year was to have an in-person podcasting event. And he wrote me back and said, I've been thinking about doing a roundtable just for podcasters. Maybe we could collab on something. So my biggest mentor, the person I had invested in and I was about to invest in one more time.
Oh my gosh.
Is now considering me to do a collaboration event. So this is what I'm talking about, you guys. And I love that I get to share this full circle moment with you right now today, because it literally just happened like last night and this morning we were texting.
Okay, that's so crazy. Breaking news, people.
Breaking news. And so, I'm still going to run my event the way I wanted to at the end of the year. And I'm now actually in him even saying he wanted to run something like that. It's proof of market research that he knows this is something that's needed. So
Yes.
not only did he give me a little bit of like,
Yeah, that
what
was a
I
little
needed to,
wisdom. That was a little
yep,
nugget that, like it just justifies everything that you already knew to be true, but maybe you didn't have the
yep.
research in front of you, but now you do.
And as a projector, I love to be invited. So him asking if I want to collaborate, like I was like, that's my love language. Let's go. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, I love talking about stuff like this. And I think these stories, when we get to share them, and I'm so grateful for women like you who are creating space to have a place where people can share their transitions, because while that all sounded great, and I really gave you guys the like shiny version of everything, like there were many moments in there where I questioned, like, just go back to what you're good at. Just go back to doing hair.
Why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you making everything so difficult? Believe me, so many times you get into these dark nights of the soul, right? The existential crisis, like, why in the name of am I doing this to myself? I mean, just go back to where you know it's an easy thing. Why can't I be easy like that? I don't know why I must do this. But
because there are people like us that just don't have, like, we were gifted this type of mind to expand, and that if we don't keep expanding and growing and searching, and that is what keeps us fulfilled and looking for the joy. And I think at the end of the day, like, it's helped me, own, like, we're not a couple of spring chickens over here, right? Like, I'm 42. I know you're a smidge older. Like,
just a little smidge older than that.
These are things you learn as you go through your journey. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, holy shit, like, this is a lot. Jess just shared so many things. Like, if you can't at the end of the day, like, enjoy the journey and the process and allow things to ebb and flow and to work and not work and to like let yourself explore, that's the whole point of all of this. That's the whole point. That's life.
That is exactly. I heard somebody say it, and then we'll like wrap this up. I know, because my cleaners are probably going to be coming here anytime soon, and I got to get out of the whirlwind that I just did in my bathroom, clean that up. Funny, but see, I'm blessed, right? Because I'm lucky because I can do that. But somebody put it like this way in terms of enjoying the journey is like, if you have an ice cream cone, what's the best part of the ice cream cone? When you're finished with it, when it's gone, or while you're enjoying, tasting the flavor and the coldness and the coolness as you're, putting it down the hatch. You know what I'm saying? What's the best part? It's the enjoyment of licking that ice cream cone.
I love this.
And making
it a good analogy.
It's a whole thing, right? It's a whole vibe. I mean, it's the sumptuousness of life. And so I would be so bored and I would not be sparkly at all if I didn't have something, that next thing, to keep expanding. Or I have a curious mind. So I ask tons of questions, which is why podcasting is my total favorite thing, because, nosy, I love to keep asking questions. Well, how'd you do that? Well, what is it? So I think that this is important that you had the platform today and that you and I were talking today, because you actually have a lot of good information for me personally. So
good.
That, but then also there's a million me's out there that are looking for this same kind of like, well, if she can do it, then I guess it is possible. And that's the energy I'm trying to emit. It's, the energy from which I'm trying to create this is, that's how it will resonate. It's like, if someone else can do it, then maybe, just maybe, I can too. So you've given them permission to entertain, to pivot, to jump in, take a chance, because fortune favors the brave. So you don't know until you jump in, and we'll see where it takes you. So all
Love
good,
that.
sis. I thank you so much for just all the good information, like the nitty gritty. I'm all down with nitty gritty. That is like my jam. You can't tell me too many details, because I'll be like, really? And then what else? Like, we're going to have to do another episode, because I'm not short and sweet. I like all the story, the whole story. So we'll have to do another one. And I'll be putting something else out there, because I'm going to be drafting Jess into something that I'm doing too. I'm going to be dragging her in for a retreat, but we'll just kind of polish that up to see exactly what goodness and juiciness she's going to be imbibing onto my group. So I can't freaking wait. So this was awesome. Jess, thank you so much for your time today. And I can't wait to see this thing rock and roll. I mean, it's just like expanding leaps and bounds within months. So
it's been
you're
cool.
gonna have to
Thank you
get
for having
yourself
me.
the Get Rich Lucky Bitch app, because I mean, it's already happening. It's gonna be filled. Every month is gonna be filled up, every line. So it's so exciting. All right, sis. I can't wait to talk to you again. I'll be in touch. Thank you for your wisdom and all of your bravery and everything. And let's do this. You find Jess. I'll put all of her information As we talked about, every contact this way to Sunday, she's going to be in there. You're interested in podcasting. Here's our girl. Okay. So do it. Don't wait. What are you freaking waiting for? I mean, there's no more waiting reason. So let's go. All right, friend. We will see you. Signing off till the next time. That was so fun. That was
So good. Yes.
fun. I love it. I'm going to put this